What's up, guys? Today we're going to look at Advent of Code Day 4. I'm still using my school Chromebook because it looked okay yesterday and it was easy. So this is continuing with the elves, but the theme is clean up. They each have sections to clean up, like I'm 2 to 5 and you're 10 to 20. And we're looking for overlaps so we don't cover the same areas twice. Luckily, we're not having to choose one elf and compare him to all the others. We're just doing 2 at a time. Do these 2 guys overlap? Yes or no? And the format of the input comes to us like this. It's like number dash number, comma, number dash number. So our first and really our biggest challenge is just parsing that. It's just reading that data into some form we can use so that it's separated, it's converted, it's numbers and not strings. Okay, let's take a look at our stuff. I've got the file lined up, and this is the same as the last few days. If we print it, you can see what it looks like. This is basically 4 numbers and a bunch of punctuation in each line, and we want to handle that. So I'm going to make a function to do the first part, and the word we use for that is parse. Parse means like to read something and separate it, understand what the chunks are, what kind of thing they are. And I'm going to say parse pairs because this thing is going to give us pairs, like 2 numbers and 2 numbers, okay? And it's going to take in a line. And this reminds me a lot of Code Wars. I mentioned that you can look at codewars.com and see a bunch of exercises. If you do those, you'll really learn 2 things. One is list comprehensions, and the other is string methods. Specifically, join and split are really common. So, we could do this with regular expressions. We could do this in other ways, but I'm going to use list comprehensions and string methods because those are fresh in my mind because I had some kids in my 7th period who were looking at Code Wars, and I was thinking about those things. So I'm going to say we want to split this string twice. We want to split it based on the comma, which is in the middle, and then each of those we want to split it based on the dash. So split, by default, it goes with a space, but we're not using a space here. We're using a comma, and then I'm going to do something with the I don't know, what do we want to call it? Line dot split dash for line in line dot split comma. I think that works. Pairs equals. Now, usually in a list comprehension, you write it from left to right. This one I kind of wrote it backwards because I was thinking outside in or whatever, but it works either way. And then I want to do one more step before this function is done. I want to turn them into integers. Because, you could do less than or greater than with strings, and it usually works, but it's not the same. So I'm going to say pairs, if I could type, equals, we're going to say int, and then we have to give them names. I'm just going to say A and B, but we'll see what happens. We might change that. Int A, int B, and then I think we have to put this whole thing in parentheses for pair in pairs, which is like, no, for A, B in pairs, which is like, okay, going through that thing we just made in the previous line, now we're going to turn them into integers. And I'm sure we could do both of these in one step, but for my brain, it helps to separate it. And then this function is done. It's going to spit out that result. So let's run that on the lines. So I'm going to go for line, in lines, print parse pairs of line, which is like, okay, split it on the comma, split it on the hyphen, dash, whatever, and then turn them into ints. So in this result, we should see no quotes, everything's separated, everything's ready to go. let's see. I mean, there's a high chance I made a typo. Nope, that looks all right. See, this is ready to go. They are numbers. They are separated. They are organized. I love it. And really, that was the hard part. Okay. So in part one, they want us to find the overlaps, but the complete overlaps. Like if one range is completely, made redundant by the other one. So I'm going to make a function for that too, because I don't know, it just seems nice. I'm going to call this contains, and it's going to take a pair, pairs, I guess, pair of pairs. Because when I say pair, do I mean the two numbers or do I mean four numbers that go to each other? So I'm going to say okay, let's give them names. Again, I'm going to say AB and CD because I can't think of anything better. But it's nice to give things names because I don't want to have to say oh, this is the first one of the first pair, or this is the second one of the first pair. I want to be able to just say, here's a letter, done. Okay, so pairs. And then we want to say okay, if the range of the first one is completely inside the range of the second one, or the other way around, we're going to say, true. And luckily, we don't have to actually care about the inside of the range. We just care about the edges because that's what matters. So I'm going to say something like A. Okay, so if if AB is inside CD, that means A is greater than or equal to C, and B is less than or equal to D. And then we want to go with the other side, like if CD is inside of AB. And since that's pretty much the same, I'm going to copy them and just switch the less than or greater than stuff. So now this will tell us, we're going to send it one of these lines, and it'll tell us if one of them completely contains the other. Okay. So let's say I'm going to do this in two separate steps. We could pile up multiple functions, but I want to say pairs equals parse pairs of line, and then if contains pairs, we want to have a score. For the last few, we've had a score thing. So I'm going to do that same idea. And then at the end, we're going to print our score. So I'm going to say okay, if you find a line that completely contains one inside the other, add one to our score, and then tell me how many. And it's 466. And I did this a minute ago. That is, in fact, the right answer. Okay. So now for part two, it's not just completely overlapping. It's if they touch each other at all. So if mine is 1 to 10 and yours is 10 to 1,000,000, well, we do overlap in that one spot. So that's enough to make it a yes for this answer, which means it'll be higher than the other guy. It'll be something more than 466. Okay. So I'm going to say basically everything is the same except for this. We're just going to call a different function right here, but everything else is pretty much the same idea. So let's just make another function, and I'm going to call it overlaps because it's not contains anymore. It's if they, the edges touch or but it still includes the contains. I almost said it still contains the contains. So it takes pairs, and I think we'll still call them A, B, and C, D, although that was kind of confusing. Maybe we'll think of a better name. And then we have to say okay, if the edges touch either way, they're not guaranteed to be in order. Like AB is not guaranteed to be a lower range than CD, I think. And so if, what do we want to say, like if B is between A and C, like that, you know what I mean? Like I need a little Venn diagram on the thing. But if B is between A and C, or the other way around, like you know what I'm saying. Like I'm trying to do it with hands. I think I'm going to say D is between A and C. Is that right? No. Yes. D is between A and B. Or contains, because that is still possible. Like the contains wouldn't necessarily be captured by these, but it does still count toward our score. And I'm sure there's a faster way to do this. I'm sure you could say like, okay, instead of finding what does count, we could find what doesn't and then eliminate those, and then we're left with, you know, a yes. But I think this is going to work. Let's see. If we hit run, I have to change this to overlaps. Then it's going to be like, okay, we want to say that if they overlap this way, or they overlap this way, or it's contained, then we get 788. And I think, nope, that's not the answer. It's not the answer that I typed in. So it must be this thing right here. What did I do here? Oh, this is like, I switched these guys. It should be C. Okay, so basically we have the range. There's like, say this is AB, and we could overlap like this, or we could overlap like this. That's the idea. So in that case, maybe C is between A and B, or D is between A and B. Then we can say either one of those would count, or the contains would count. And that's going to give us a bigger number, because we're not thinking of it. I think the way I started to write it was like, we're looking to see what overlaps with CD. But for this one, we're holding AB in place and seeing if the other guy dances around it. We could have held CD in place and seeing if this one does. And so that, in that case, it would be if C less than A less than D, or C less than B less than D. But I tried to do a mix. I tried to do one of one and one of the other, and that wasn't working for my one that I typed a minute ago. So this is what we got, and this is the answer they're looking for. I really like this question because it's spread out. It's not like a couple little steps and one big one. It's like a couple medium steps, and none of them is more important than the others. I think probably this part is harder to think of at the beginning, where you're parsing it into a usable form, but there's so many ways to do it. And it's really only 2 lines of stuff. And I'm sure you could do it in one if you used like map, or if you used regular expressions, or if you used some kind of galaxy brain stuff that I'm not considering. So that was a good one. And honestly, just looking at the code, it looks nicer than the last couple of days, because the last couple of days have been like 4, if, indented all the way down the line. And what I've got here is like nice little functions, never more than one indent. And this I'm happy to look at.